The Zentari recruitment station buzzed with activity as species from across the galaxy gathered for the annual Galactic Defense Force selection trials. Commander Thexel, a towering reptilian officer with scarred hide and forearms, watched the candidates with predatory interest. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled warriors, hulking Gorvak berserkers, agile Scytheran assassins, and armored Krellian shock troops. Then he saw them. 3 human females stood near the registration terminal, their pale skin almost luminescent under the station's harsh lighting. The tallest had short auburn hair and wore simple combat fatigues that seemed almost primitive compared to the advanced armor systems of other species. The second was darker-skinned with intricate braids, her stance relaxed but alert. The youngest appeared barely past adolescence by human standards, blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Thexel's mandibles clicked in what passed for Zentari laughter. Around him, other alien officers began to take notice. "Are those human spawn?" growled Captain Vextar, a Gorvak whose massive frame was covered in ritual scars. "They look like they haven't even reached breeding age." "The humans grow more desperate each cycle," hissed Lieutenant Soraya, her crystalline Satharan features catching the light. "First they send their males to die in our wars, now they offer their females as fodder." The human women seemed oblivious to the attention they were drawing. The auburn-haired one, her name tag read Chen, was reviewing a datapad with clinical precision. Her companions flanked her naturally, their positioning suggesting military experience despite their youth. "Attention candidates." Thexel's voice boomed across the station through the comm system. "Welcome to Outpost Kethmore. You are here because your species believes you worthy to join the Galactic Defense Force. You will be tested in combat, tactics, and survival. Most of you will fail." His gaze lingered on the human females. "Some of you should not have come at all." The trials would begin on Kethmore Prime, a hostile world where previous generations of elite soldiers had been forged through blood and determination. The planet's surface was a nightmare of jagged rock formations, acid storms, and predatory wildlife that had evolved to hunt in packs. It was here that the galaxy's finest warriors proved their worth. As the transport ships prepared for departure, the alien soldiers continued their mockery. A group of Krellian warriors, their chitinous armor gleaming, surrounded the human women near the boarding ramp. "Little human females," one of them chittered, his mandibles dripping with contempt. "Are you certain you boarded the correct transport? The civilian evacuation ships are in Bay 7. Chen looked up from her equipment check, meeting the alien's compound eyes without flinching. "We're exactly where we need to be." "Your species' males barely qualify as cannon fodder," another Krellian laughed. What could their spawn possibly offer? The blonde human, her tag read Morrison, stepped forward slightly. Her movement was subtle, but those with combat experience recognized the shift in weight, the positioning of feet. "Guess you'll find out." The third human, Okafor, said nothing, but her dark eyes tracked each alien soldier with the patience of a predator cataloging prey. The Krellians found this amusing. Their laughter echoed through the bay, drawing more attention from other species. Soon a crowd had gathered to witness what they assumed would be the humans' humiliation. "Perhaps we should establish a wager," suggested one of the Gorvak officers. "How long before the human females break?" "I give them 1 day on Kethmore." "Too generous," rumbled another. 6 hours maximum." Credit chips began changing hands as bets were placed. The odds were overwhelmingly against the humans surviving even the first trial. Some aliens wagered on whether the women would even make it off the transport alive, given Kethmore's hostile environment. Chen continued her equipment preparation with mechanical precision. Her rifle was a standard human military issue, primitive by galactic standards, using chemical propellants instead of energy cells. Her armor was lightweight composite material that looked fragile compared to the powered exoskeletons and energy shields of other species. "That weapon," scoffed a Scytheran warrior, "is that a relic from your species' pre-spaceflight era?" "Something like that," Chen replied, checking her scope calibration. "It will be useless against modern armor," the alien continued. "Our defensive systems can deflect plasma bolts and particle beams. Your projectile weapons are obsolete." Morrison looked up from cleaning her sidearm. "We'll see." The transport shuddered as it entered Kethmore's atmosphere. Through the viewports, the planet's surface revealed itself in all its hostile glory. Jagged mountains pierced a sky the color of dried blood, while storms of corrosive rain swept across valleys carved by millennia of acid erosion. In the distance, massive creatures moved between the rock formations, apex predators that had evolved in this hellscape. Magnificent, isn't it? Thexel announced over the comm. Kethamor has claimed the lives of thousands of warriors. Its predators are faster than Scytherans, stronger than Gorvaks, and more armored than Krellians. The planet itself will try to kill you before you even encounter enemy forces. The transport touched down on a plateau of black stone, its surface scarred by countless landings. As the bay doors opened, the harsh atmosphere of Kethamor flooded in, breathable for most species, but tainted with sulfur and carrying the metallic scent of danger. Your first trial begins now, Thexel continued. Survival march to Checkpoint Alpha, 15 kilometers through hostile terrain. You will encounter both environmental hazards and indigenous predators. Casualties are expected. The alien soldiers filed out with confidence born of superior technology and physical capability. Gorvak warriors activated personal shields. Scytherans engaged optical camouflage, and Krellians powered up their servo-assisted armor. The 3 human women shouldered their primitive packs and checked their weapons one final time. They moved with economy of motion, wasting no energy on displays of bravado. "Good luck, little humans," called one of the aliens mockingly. "Try not to die too quickly." Chen turned back briefly, her expression unreadable. "We won't." As the candidates spread out across Kethamor's unforgiving landscape, none of the alien soldiers noticed how the 3 human women moved. They didn't see the way Chen's eyes tracked wind patterns and evaluated sightlines. They missed Morrison's subtle hand signals and Okafor's patient observation of the terrain ahead. They were too busy laughing to notice that the hunters had arrived. 3 hours into the survival march, the first screams echoed across Kethamor's twisted landscape. The alien soldiers who had been so confident earlier now moved with growing unease as their numbers began to dwindle. The planet's predators were unlike anything most species had encountered. Razor-backed stalkers moved through the rocky terrain with liquid grace, their chitinous hides deflecting energy weapons with ease. Pack hunters called spine rippers coordinated their attacks with frightening intelligence, using the planet's natural acoustics to confuse and disorient their prey. Commander Thexel monitored the situation from his command post, watching life signs disappear from his tactical display one by one. The Gorvak warriors, despite their strength and thick hide, were falling to the native creatures faster than expected. Even the heavily armored Krellians found their energy shields overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of Kethamor's ecosystem. "Sir," reported his aide, "we've lost 12 candidates in the first sector alone. The Spine Ripper pack is more aggressive than usual." Thexel's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the display. Several groups of alien soldiers had formed defensive positions, their advanced weaponry creating light shows in the crimson sky as they fought for survival. Energy beams and plasma bolts lit up the darkness, but the indigenous predators seemed to adapt quickly to each new threat. Then he noticed something peculiar. 3 human life signs moved steadily through the most dangerous terrain, making consistent progress toward Checkpoint Alpha, while other candidates struggled or died around them. "Zoom in on Sector 7, he ordered. The tactical display focused on a narrow canyon where the 3 human women moved with deliberate purpose. Chen led the formation, her primitive rifle held at low ready while her eyes constantly scanned the rocky walls above. Morrison covered their rear, her movements fluid and controlled. Okafor held the center position, her weapon trained on potential ambush points. "How are they moving so efficiently?" the aide asked. "That sector has the highest concentration of stalker nests." Before Thexel could respond, his question was answered. A massive razor-backed stalker dropped from the canyon wall directly above Chen's position. The creature was the size of a ground vehicle, its crystalline spines gleaming with deadly purpose. Its compound eyes had locked onto the human, and its mandibles spread wide to reveal rows of serrated teeth. The alien observers expected to witness the human's death. Instead, they saw something that would haunt their memories for years to come. Chen's reaction was instantaneous. Without breaking stride, she pivoted on her left foot and brought her rifle to bear. The weapon's report was a sharp crack that echoed through the canyon, primitive and harsh compared to the high-tech energy weapons they were accustomed to. The stalker's head exploded in a spray of green ichor. The massive body crashed to the canyon floor, Its nervous system severed so completely that its death throes lasted only seconds. Chen had already resumed her forward movement before the creature hit the ground, her rifle returning to ready position as if nothing had happened. "Impossible," whispered the aide. "Stalker hide can deflect plasma rifles. How did a primitive projectile weapon?" His question was cut short as more predators emerged from concealed positions throughout the canyon. Spine rippers materialized from crevices in the rock walls, their pack-hunting instincts triggered by the scent of their fallen apex predator. 6 of the creatures moved to surround the human women, their coordinated attack pattern designed to overwhelm even the most advanced alien warriors. Morrison and Okafor reacted with the same lethal precision as their companion. Their rifles spoke in rapid succession, each shot placed with surgical accuracy. The spine rippers' coordination collapsed as their pack leaders died instantly, their smaller brains unable to process the speed and efficiency of the human response. In less than 10 seconds, 7 of Kethmore's most dangerous predators lay dead around the 3 women, who continued their march as if they had merely swatted insects. "Run the footage again," Thexel commanded, his voice strained. The tactical display replayed the engagement in slow motion. The alien officers watched in stunned silence as Chen's bullet punched through the stalker's armored hide like it was tissue paper. The projectile hadn't deflected or lost energy. It had penetrated completely, delivering devastating kinetic force to the creature's brainstem. "The ballistics don't make sense," the aide stammered. "Chemical propellant weapons shouldn't be able to—" "Unless," Thexel interrupted, his understanding dawning with terrible clarity. "They're not using standard projectiles." A new alert flashed on the tactical display. Another group of candidates was under attack in Sector 12, a mixed unit of Scytheran and Krellian soldiers who had been among the most vocal in mocking the human women. A pack of 18 spine rippers had cornered them in a shallow depression, overwhelming their energy shields through sheer numbers. The aliens' advanced weaponry was proving ineffective against the creature's adaptive hide, which seemed to absorb and disperse energy attacks. The soldiers were falling back toward a cliff face, their ammunition running low and their defensive perimeter collapsing. Then 3 figures appeared on the ridge above the battle. Chen, Morrison, and Okafor had heard the sounds of combat and altered their course to investigate. They now overlooked the desperate fight below, where their former tormentors faced extinction at the claws of Kethmore's predators. "Should we help them?" Morrison asked quietly, her rifle already trained on the spine ripper pack leader. Chen studied the tactical situation with professional detachment. The alien soldiers who had mocked them hours earlier were now trapped and dying, their technological superiority useless against an enemy that had evolved beyond their weapons' capabilities. "They're not part of our mission parameters," Okafor observed. For a moment, the 3 women watched the aliens' desperate struggle. Energy weapons painted the rocks with colorful light as shields failed and soldiers fell. The spine rippers pressed their advantage, their pack intelligence allowing them to coordinate attacks that exploited every weakness in the aliens' formation. Chen made her decision. Her first shot removed the pack leader's head with clinical precision. Morrison's rifle cracked twice, dropping the secondary leaders who were coordinating the flanking attacks. Okafor's steady fire began picking off the pack members with mechanical efficiency, each bullet finding its target despite the chaos below. The spine rippers, suddenly deprived of their coordination and seeing their numbers rapidly dwindling, broke off their attack and retreated into the rocky terrain. The surviving alien soldiers found themselves alone in the depression, surrounded by the corpses of their attackers. They looked up at the ridge where 3 human women stood silhouetted against Kethmore's blood-red sky, smoke rising from the barrels of their primitive weapons. "Did they just—" one of the Scytherans began. "Save our lives," finished a Krellian warrior, his armored mandibles clicking in disbelief. The human women shouldered their rifles and disappeared from the ridge without a word, continuing their march toward Checkpoint Alpha, while the aliens they had rescued struggled to process what they had witnessed. Back at the command post, Thexel stared at his tactical display in growing unease. The 3 human life signs continued their steady progress through terrain that had claimed dozens of his finest warriors, moving with a purpose and efficiency that defied explanation. "Sir," his aide reported, his voice shaking slightly. "Long-range sensors are detecting something unusual about the human weapons. The projectiles they're firing, They're not standard ammunition. Thexel's blood ran cold as the implications became clear. What are they using? Depleted uranium cores with tungsten penetrator tips, sir. Armor-piercing rounds designed specifically to defeat modern defensive systems. The commander's 4 hands clenched into fists as understanding dawned. The human women hadn't come to Kethmore unprepared. They had come equipped to kill everything they encountered, alien and indigenous alike. Their primitive weapons were engineered specifically to penetrate the advanced armor that made other species feel invincible, and they were only 3 hours into a week-long trial. Dawn on Kethmore brought no relief from the planet's hostility. The acid storms had passed during the night, leaving behind a landscape that steamed with toxic vapors and reflected the pale light in twisted patterns. Of the original 200 candidates who had begun the survival march, fewer than 60 remained alive. The alien survivors huddled in defensive positions throughout the terrain, their advanced technology proving inadequate against both the planet's predators and its environmental hazards. Energy shields failed under the corrosive effects of the atmosphere. Sophisticated sensors were confused by the mineral composition of the rocks. Even the mighty Gorvak warriors found their regenerative abilities taxed by toxins their physiology had never encountered. But 3 human women continued. Their methodical advance toward checkpoint Alpha Chen knelt beside a shallow pool of water that had collected in a natural depression, running a simple chemical test strip through the liquid. The paper changed colors, indicating the presence of heavy metals and acidic compounds that would be lethal to most species, safe for human consumption after filtration, she reported quietly. Morrison nodded and began setting up a portable purification unit, a device so basic compared to galactic standard, equipment that most aliens would have dismissed it as primitive. The unit used gravity-fed filtration through activated carbon and ceramic elements, requiring no power source that could fail or emit signatures that predators might detect. OK4 maintained watch while her companions worked, her rifle trained on the approaches to their position. Her breathing was controlled and steady despite the thin atmosphere. Her body adapted to function efficiently under stress conditions that would exhaust soldiers from more comfortable worlds. Movement. 200 meters northwest, she whispered. 3 Krellian survivors heading for the water source. Chen looked up from her tactical map. The Krellians were part of the group that had been most vocal in their mockery during the initial briefing. Their chitinous armor was now cracked and pitted from acid exposure, and their movements suggested dehydration and exhaustion. They're heading straight into a stalker nest, Morrison observed, studying the terrain through her scope. The thermal signatures are clear from this angle. The 3 alien warriors stumbled through the rocky outcropping, their sophisticated sensors apparently unable to detect the predators that lay in wait. Their energy weapons were held at ready position, but previous encounters had demonstrated the limitations of such technology against Kethmore's native species. Chen made a tactical assessment with the cold efficiency that had kept her team alive. The Krellians would draw the stalker's attention, potentially clearing the path ahead for her unit's continued advance. Their deaths would serve a strategic purpose. She raised her rifle. The first shot took down the lead stalker before it could emerge from its concealed position. The creature's death cry echoed across the rocks, alerting the entire nest to the presence of intruders. But instead of attacking the approaching Krellians, the remaining predators began seeking the source of the lethal projectile that had killed their packmate. Chen's second shot eliminated another stalker as it attempted to locate her position. Morrison and Okafor joined the engagement, their rifles speaking with measured precision as they systematically dismantled the ambush before the Krellians even realized they were walking into a trap. The, alien warriors froze as the sounds of battle erupted around them, their heads turning in confusion as stalkers fell dead from concealed positions they had never detected. When the shooting stopped, they found themselves standing in a clearing littered with the corpses of predators that would have torn them apart. Where did the shots come from? One of the Krellians asked, his translator struggling to convey his bewilderment. His answer came from the ridge above, where 3 human silhouettes stood outlined against the pale sky. The women watched the aliens for a moment, then disappeared back into the rocks without acknowledging the lives they had saved. The Krellians stared at the position where the humans had been, trying to process what had just occurred. Their advanced armor systems had detected no weapons fire, no energy signatures, No technological emissions that would indicate the presence of hostile forces. Yet their lives had been preserved by creatures they had dismissed as inferior. Back at the command post, Thexel studied the latest reports with growing unease. The human women had now intervened in 4 separate engagements, saving the lives of alien soldiers who had mocked them while demonstrating combat capabilities that defied explanation. Their weapons technology is more sophisticated than we realized, his aide reported. The projectiles are subsonic, making them nearly impossible to detect with standard sensor arrays. The weapons themselves emit no energy signatures. They're completely invisible to our tracking systems. Thexel's mandibles clicked in what might have been admiration or fear. They're using our own technological dependence against us. We've become so reliant on energy-based detection that we've forgotten how to counter kinetic weapons. But sir, kinetic weapons are obsolete. No species has used them in centuries because they're ineffective against modern armor. Unless you design the ammunition specifically to defeat that armor, Thexel realized. These humans didn't bring obsolete weapons, they brought weapons engineered to kill us. The implications sent a chill through the command center. The human females hadn't come to Kethmore to prove themselves worthy of joining the Galactic Defense Force. They had come to demonstrate that humanity possessed military capabilities the galaxy had never recognized. On the planet's surface, Chen's team reached Checkpoint Alpha as the sun reached its zenith. The checkpoint was nothing more than a reinforced bunker built into a cliff face, designed to provide shelter during the worst of Kethmore's environmental hazards. It was also where the real trials would begin. Inside the bunker, they found 12 alien survivors from the various species that had begun the march. Gorvak, Scytheran, and Krellian warriors sat in exhausted silence, their technological superiority having proven inadequate against the planet's challenges. Many bore injuries that their advanced medical systems couldn't fully address in the field. The aliens looked up as the 3 human women entered, their expressions ranging from confusion to grudging respect. These were soldiers who had survived encounters with Kethmore's deadliest predators, but they had done so only because the humans had repeatedly intervened to save their lives. "You," began one of the Gorvaks, his massive frame hunched with exhaustion. "You saved my pack from the spine rippers." Chen nodded acknowledgement but said nothing. She was already studying the tactical displays that showed the next phase of the trials, a combat simulation where candidates would face off against holographic enemies designed to test their tactical abilities and weapons effectiveness. "Why?" asked a Scytheran female, her crystalline features reflecting the bunker's emergency lighting. "We mocked your species. We called you inferior. Why did you preserve our lives?" Morrison looked up from her equipment check. "Because you're soldiers." The simple statement carried weight that transcended species barriers. These beings had trained for war, had dedicated their lives to protecting their civilizations from threats both known and unknown. In the crucible of Kethmore's hostile environment, such dedication earned respect regardless of origin. "The next trial begins in 6 hours, announced Thexel's voice over the comm system. "Candidates will face simulated combat scenarios designed to test tactical thinking and weapons effectiveness. Performance will be evaluated by an automated system that measures accuracy, efficiency, and strategic decision-making." Chen exchanged glances with her teammates. The real test was about to begin, not of their survival skills, but of their ability to wage war against targets that might represent any species in the galaxy. As the alien survivors settled in to rest and recover, they couldn't help but notice how the 3 human women maintained their equipment with meticulous care. Every component of their weapons was cleaned and inspected. Ammunition was counted and organized. Equipment was arranged for maximum efficiency. These weren't soldiers preparing for a trial, the aliens realized with growing unease. These were hunters preparing for a kill, and somewhere in the back of their minds a terrifying question began to form. If human females possessed such lethal capabilities, what could human males accomplish? The combat simulation chamber within Checkpoint Alpha was a marvel of galactic technology. Holographic projectors created 3-dimensional environments indistinguishable from reality, while force field generators provided tactile feedback for impacts and environmental effects. The chamber could simulate any battlefield scenario from across the known galaxy, testing candidates against enemies both familiar and exotic. Commander Thexel watched from the observation deck as the alien survivors prepared for their trials. Each species brought their traditional combat doctrines. Gorvaks relied on brute force and regeneration. Scytherans used stealth and precision strikes. Krellians deployed overwhelming firepower with energy weapons. Their approaches had been refined over thousands of years of warfare, proven effective against countless enemies. The first simulation began with a Gorvak warrior facing a squad of holographic rebel fighters in an urban environment. The massive alien charged forward with typical Gorvak aggression, his natural armor deflecting energy bolts while his claws tore through enemy positions. Within minutes, he had eliminated all targets through sheer physical dominance. Standard Gorvak performance, noted Thexel's aide. Effective but predictable. Next came a Scytheran assassin, who used optical camouflage to infiltrate enemy lines and eliminate targets with surgical precision. Her performance was flawless by conventional standards. Each kill was clean, efficient, and demonstrated the legendary stealth capabilities of her species. The Krellian warriors followed, their coordinated fire teams working in perfect synchronization. Energy beams lanced out with mathematical precision, overwhelming enemy defenses through superior technology and firepower. Their tactics were textbook examples of modern warfare. Then it was Chen's turn. She entered the simulation chamber with the same calm demeanor she had maintained throughout the trials. Her primitive rifle was held at ready position, her stance relaxed but alert. The chamber's sensors detected her presence and began generating the test scenario. The environment materialized around her, a mountainous region with scattered cover and multiple elevation changes. Enemy forces began appearing at various ranges and positions, their numbers and capabilities designed to challenge even the most skilled warriors. Chen moved. Her first shot eliminated a target at 800 meters, an impossible range for most species using handheld weapons. The holographic enemy's head snapped back as the simulated impact registered, the system's sensors recording a perfect hit despite conditions that should have made such accuracy unattainable. She flowed through the terrain like liquid death, her movements economical and purposeful. Each shot was precisely placed, each target eliminated with single bullets that found gaps in armor or struck vital areas with surgical precision. She used the environment to her advantage, appearing and disappearing among the rocks like a ghost made of gunpowder and steel. Impossible, breathed Thexel's aide. The simulation system must be malfunctioning. No organic being can achieve that level of accuracy at those ranges. Thexel said nothing, his yellow eyes fixed on the display as Chen continued her methodical destruction of the simulated enemies. She was rewriting the rules of engagement with every shot, demonstrating capabilities that the galaxy's military doctrine had never accounted for. The simulation escalated, throwing increasingly difficult challenges at the human female. Armored vehicles materialized, their energy shields designed to deflect the most powerful weapons in the galactic arsenal. Chen's response was to put bullets through the vision slits of the operators, using precision to overcome technological superiority. Flying drones swarmed toward her position, their speed and maneuverability making them nearly impossible targets for conventional weapons. Chen tracked them with inhuman calm, leading her shots with mathematical precision that dropped each mechanical predator from the sky. Her accuracy rating is beyond the system's parameters, the aide reported, his voice strained. The computer is showing error messages because it cannot process performance levels this high. The simulation reached its crescendo with the appearance of a massive war machine, a holographic construct designed to test the absolute limits of candidate capabilities. The machine bristled with energy weapons and defensive systems, its armor rated to withstand direct hits from Starship-class weapons. Chen studied the target for exactly 3 seconds, identifying weak points that the machine's designers had never intended to be vulnerable. Her rifle cracked once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Each bullet found a different critical system: sensors, power coupling, and command processor. The war machine collapsed into a pile of deactivated components. Simulation complete. The chamber's holographic environment faded, leaving Chen standing alone among the projector arrays. She ejected her rifle's magazine, counted the remaining rounds, and made a notation in a small notebook she carried. Her expression remained unchanged, as if she had just completed a routine training exercise rather than achieving the highest combat scores in the simulation system's history. Morrison's trial followed, and the pattern repeated itself. Her approach was different, more aggressive, using movement and angles to create opportunities for devastating close-range engagements. But the results were the same. Enemies eliminated with surgical precision, technological advantages overcome through skill and determination. Okafor's performance was perhaps the most unsettling for the alien observers. She approached each scenario with patient calculation, allowing enemies to reveal themselves before striking with lethal efficiency. Her shots were placed with such precision that the simulation system had difficulty determining how she could have acquired the necessary targeting data. Run a full diagnostic on the simulation chamber, Thexel ordered. These results cannot be accurate. The diagnostic revealed what the commander had feared to discover. The simulation system was functioning perfectly. The human women had simply demonstrated combat capabilities that exceeded the galaxy's understanding of what organic beings could achieve. Sir, the aide reported quietly, I've been analyzing their ammunition usage. In 3 full combat simulations, they fired a total of 47 rounds. That's less ammunition than most species use for target practice. How many targets were eliminated? 236 confirmed kills, sir, including the heavy armor units and aerospace targets. Thexel's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed the implications. The human women weren't just superior marksmen, they were approaching combat with a fundamental understanding of efficiency that no other species had developed. Every shot was placed with purpose, every movement calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum expenditure of resources. The alien survivors in the bunker watched the humans complete their trials with growing unease. These beings that they had dismissed as inferior were casually achieving performance levels that would have been legendary among their own species. The women showed no signs of fatigue, no indication that they had pushed themselves to their limits. How? Asked a Krellian warrior, his voice carrying a note of desperation. How do you achieve such precision? What technology are you using? Chen looked at the alien with something that might have been amusement. Practice. The simple answer was more terrifying than any technological explanation would have been. It implied that such capabilities were the result of training rather than equipment, that every human female might possess similar potential if properly developed. As the final trials approached, the alien survivors found themselves facing a disturbing reality. They had come to Kethmore believing themselves to be the galaxy's elite warriors, confident in their technological and physical superiority. Instead, they had discovered that humanity possessed military capabilities that rendered their own obsolete. The women they had, mocked as weak and inferior, were systematically demonstrating that human concepts of warfare were fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had experienced. These weren't soldiers seeking to join the Galactic Defense Force. They were predators who had agreed to provide a demonstration of their species' capabilities. And if these were merely human females, what nightmares would human males bring to the battlefield? The tactical assessment chamber hummed with activity as Thexel reviewed the day's simulation results. Charts and data streams covered every surface, painting a picture that defied everything the Galactic Defense Force understood about warfare. The human women's performance had broken so many established military theories that the analysis systems were struggling to categorize their achievements. Commander, his aide reported, his voice tight with controlled panic. We've completed the ballistic analysis of the human weapons. The results are disturbing. Thexel's 4 hands paused over the data tablets. Explain. Their ammunition isn't just armor-piercing, sir. It's specifically designed to defeat every known defensive technology in the galaxy. Tungsten cores for Krellian energy shields, depleted uranium for Gorvak regenerative armor, crystalline disruptors for Scytheran optical camouflage systems. The commander's yellow eyes narrowed. They came prepared to fight us all. It gets worse, sir. The weapons themselves are masterpieces of engineering simplicity. No electronic components to jam, no energy signatures to track, no complex systems to fail. They're completely invisible to our standard detection methods. Thexel studied the technical readouts with growing alarm. The human weapons represented a level of engineering sophistication that the galaxy had never encountered. Not because they were advanced, but because they were perfectly designed for their intended purpose. Every component served multiple functions. Every system was redundant and robust. How long would it take our research divisions to develop countermeasures? He asked. The aide's silence was answer enough. On Kethmore's surface, the second phase of trials was beginning. The remaining candidates, now numbering only 15, including the 3 human women, had been divided into mixed-species teams for tactical exercises. The alien survivors found themselves grouped with the humans they had initially dismissed, a pairing that created unexpected dynamics. Chen led a team consisting of herself, a Gorvak heavy weapons specialist named Gorthak, and a Scytheran reconnaissance expert called Zilnara. The mission parameters were simple: infiltrate an enemy stronghold, gather intelligence, and eliminate high-value targets without triggering general alarm. The stronghold was a complex arrangement of holographic bunkers and defensive positions, populated by simulated enemies with realistic AI responses. Previous teams had approached such scenarios with overwhelming firepower, accepting casualties in exchange for mission completion. The human approach was different. Target analysis, Chen said quietly, studying the objective through her rifle scope. Sentries rotate every 12 minutes. Guard posts overlap coverage zones but have blind spots during shift changes. Electronic surveillance focused on standard approach routes. Gorthak flexed his massive claws, eager for combat. I can breach. The final day of trials dawned with an ominous change in Kethmore's atmosphere. The planet's twin suns cast harsh shadows across the testing ground as emergency klaxons echoed from the command bunker. Commander Thexel emerged from his tactical center with an expression that his subordinates had learned to fear, the look of a predator who had suddenly discovered he was prey. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're receiving priority communications from Fleet Command. The human diplomatic vessel that delivered the candidates has been joined by 3 additional ships." Thexel's mandibles clicked nervously. "Escort vessels?" "Unknown configuration, sir. They're maintaining position just outside sensor range, but their energy signatures are unusual." The commander studied the tactical display with growing unease. The human ships weren't broadcasting identification codes or responding to communication attempts. They simply waited in the void like patient hunters, their intentions as mysterious as their technology. "What's the status of the final trial preparations?" "Complete, sir. The candidates will face live-fire exercises against automated defense systems. The scenarios are designed to test combat effectiveness under real battlefield conditions." Thexel nodded grimly. The final trials had been conceived as the ultimate test of warrior capability. Candidates would face genuine threats with lethal consequences. It was here that the galaxy's finest soldiers proved their worth through blood and determination, or so the theory went. On the planet's surface, the 15 surviving candidates assembled at the entrance to the final testing area. The landscape before them was a nightmare of defensive positions, automated weapon systems, and environmental hazards designed by the galaxy's most sadistic military engineers. Energy barriers flickered between rocky outcroppings, while targeting sensors swept the terrain with deadly precision. "Candidates," Thexel's voice echoed across the testing ground, "you will advance through the defensive grid to reach the final objective. Automated systems will engage with lethal force. Medical support will be provided for survivors." The alien soldiers checked their weapons and armor systems one final time. Gorvak warriors activated their regenerative enhancement protocols. Scytherans calibrated their stealth generators. Krellians powered up their energy shields and heavy weapons platforms. The 3 human women performed their own preparations with characteristic efficiency. Chen adjusted her rifle's scope calibration for the local atmospheric conditions. Morrison counted ammunition and verified the function of her sidearm. Okafor studied the defensive grid through a simple optical telescope, making notes in her field manual. "Begin," Thexel commanded. The alien soldiers advanced with their species' traditional tactics. Gorvaks charged forward with brute force, absorbing damage while their natural armor deflected energy weapons. Scytherans used optical camouflage to infiltrate between defensive positions. Krellians established fire bases and attempted to overwhelm the automated systems through superior firepower. All of them failed. The defensive grid had been designed by species that understood energy weapons, shields, and conventional tactics. The automated systems predicted movement patterns, adjusted for stealth technology, and concentrated fire on heavily armored targets. Within minutes, half the remaining alien candidates were down with injuries that would have been fatal without medical intervention. Then Chen began her advance. She moved through the defensive grid like a ghost, her primitive rifle speaking with measured precision. Each shot found critical vulnerabilities in the automated systems: sensor clusters, power couplings, command processors. The defensive network began to collapse in cascading failures as keystone systems went offline. "Impossible," breathed Thexel's aide. "The defensive grid was designed to be impervious to kinetic weapons." "How is she penetrating the armor?" Thexel watched in horrified fascination as Chen systematically dismantled defenses that had taken years to design and construct. Her bullets found gaps in armor plating that engineers had deemed too small to exploit. She struck components that were supposed to be protected by multiple redundant systems. "She's not fighting the defenses," he realized. "She's performing surgery on them." Morrison and Okafor followed in Chen's wake, their own rifles adding to the devastating precision of the human advance. They moved with coordination that suggested years of training together, each woman covering specific sectors while maintaining perfect tactical awareness of her companions' positions. The automated defense systems, designed to counter the most advanced military technology in the galaxy, found themselves helpless against an approach they had never been programmed to recognize. Kinetic weapons striking at ranges beyond their design parameters, targeting patterns that defied conventional tactical doctrine, precision that exceeded their own sensor capabilities. Within an hour, the 3 human women stood at the final objective while the defensive grid lay in smoking ruins around them. They had not only completed the trial, they had rendered it obsolete. "Medical teams to the testing ground," Thexel ordered numbly. "Recover the alien casualties." As the injured candidates were evacuated, the commander found himself facing a terrible truth. The trials that had forged the galaxy's finest, warriors for generations, had been casually defeated by 3 human females using weapons that galactic civilization considered primitive, sir, the aide reported, his voice shaking. "We're receiving a transmission from the human ships." On screen, the holographic display activated, revealing the interior of what appeared to be a human military vessel. The being who addressed them was clearly male, his features bearing the same efficient deadliness as the women who had just completed the trials. Behind him, other humans moved with purposeful precision, their uniforms marking them as military personnel. "Commander Thexel," the human male said, his voice carrying quiet authority. "I am Colonel Marcus Chen, commanding officer of the Human Expeditionary Assessment Group. I believe you've been evaluating some of our personnel." Thexel's blood ran cold as he processed the implications. "Assessment group? The women you've been testing represent our basic infantry training graduates," Colonel Chen continued. "We needed to evaluate galactic military capabilities before proposing formal alliance agreements." "Basic infantry? Our entry-level soldiers, yes. We appreciate your cooperation in providing this assessment opportunity. The data will be invaluable in determining appropriate tactical doctrines for joint operations." The commander's mandibles trembled as understanding crashed over him like an avalanche. The human women weren't elite warriors seeking to join the Galactic Defense Force. They were rookie soldiers conducting reconnaissance on galactic military capabilities. Everything he had witnessed, the impossible accuracy, the tactical sophistication, the casual dismantling of advanced defensive systems, represented humanity's baseline military competence. "Colonel," Thexel managed, "what would you consider elite human forces?" The human male's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes that sent primal fear racing through the alien commander's nervous system. "That information is classified, Commander. Perhaps we can discuss it during our upcoming diplomatic negotiations." The transmission ended, leaving Thexel staring at a blank screen while the implications of first contact with humanity rewrote everything he understood about warfare, technology, and the balance of power in the galaxy. On Kethmore's surface, Chen shouldered her rifle and looked up at the sky where human warships waited in the darkness. The trials were over, the assessment was complete, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after the trials on Kethmore, the Galactic Defense Force headquarters had become a fortress of paranoia and desperate preparation. The pristine corridors that had once echoed with confident chatter now hummed with the urgent sounds of species preparing for a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. "Commander," Thexel stood before the assembled War Council, his 4 hands clasped behind his back as he delivered the report that would reshape military doctrine across the galaxy. Representatives from every major species filled the chamber. Gorvak generals with their scarred hides, Scytheran intelligence chiefs with their crystalline features reflecting the chamber's lights, and Krellian fleet commanders whose chitinous armor bore the marks of countless battles. The human assessment of our capabilities is complete, Thexel began, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. Their diplomatic corps has submitted formal proposals for what they term strategic cooperation agreements. A Gorvak general slammed his massive fist on the conference table. Cooperation? We are the apex predators of the galaxy. Our fleets have conquered 1,000 worlds. And yet, Thexel continued quietly, 3 of their basic infantry trainees rendered our most advanced military installation defenseless in less than 6 hours. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled war leaders. Each had received detailed reports of the Kethmore trials, but hearing the summary delivered in such stark terms forced them to confront an uncomfortable reality. What are their terms? Asked a Scytheran intelligence chief, her voice carefully modulated to hide the fear that her crystalline features couldn't fully conceal. Thexel activated the holographic display, revealing the human diplomatic proposals in all their terrifying reasonableness. They offer technological cooperation, joint training programs, and mutual defense agreements. In exchange, they request full access to galactic shipping lanes, mining rights in uninhabited systems, and formal recognition as a sovereign power. Their requests are modest, observed a Krellian fleet commander. Suspiciously so. Because they don't need to demand more, Thexel replied. The women we tested weren't trying to prove their species worthy of joining our alliance. They were determining whether we were worth preserving as junior partners. The holographic display shifted to show tactical analysis of human weapons and capabilities. The data painted a picture that defied everything the galactic powers understood about military science. Their weapons technology represents a complete paradigm shift, Thexel explained. While we focused on energy weapons and defensive systems, they've perfected kinetic warfare to a level that makes our defenses obsolete. Our shields can stop plasma bolts and particle beams, but they're useless against precisely targeted projectiles traveling at hypersonic velocities. Primitive kinetic weapons, scoffed a Gorvak general. Our ancestors abandoned such crude tools millennia ago. Their ammunition is engineered specifically to defeat modern armor, Thexel countered. Every round is a masterpiece of metallurgy and physics, designed to penetrate whatever target it encounters. They've turned simplicity into the ultimate sophistication. The assembled leaders studied the technical readouts with growing unease. Human weapons were marvels of engineering efficiency. No electronic components to jam, no energy signatures to track, no complex systems to fail. They were invisible to standard detection methods and immune to conventional countermeasures. What about their numbers? Asked a Scytheran. Surely they cannot match our production capabilities. Thexel's expression grew even more grim. Human industrial capacity isn't substantial. Intelligence estimates suggest they can outfit and train new soldiers at rates that exceed our combined recruitment capabilities. And remember, what we witnessed on Kethmore represents their baseline competence. A new voice entered the discussion as the chamber's main display activated. Colonel Marcus Chen appeared on screen, his calm demeanor serving as a stark contrast to the barely controlled panic in the Galactic Council chamber. Council members, he said with polite formality, I hope you've had time to review our cooperation proposals. The Gorvak general, who had been most vocal in his objections, leaned forward aggressively. What happens if we refuse your terms, human? Colonel Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes that sent primal fear through every alien in the chamber. That would be unfortunate. We've grown quite fond of the galactic community during our assessment period. The statement was delivered with such casual politeness that its implications took several seconds to sink in. The humans weren't threatening conquest or destruction. They were expressing disappointment at the possibility of conflict. Somehow that was infinitely more terrifying. You would wage war against the entire galaxy? The Gorvak demanded. War? Colonel Chen seemed genuinely puzzled by the concept. There wouldn't be a war, General. Wars require opponents of relatively equal capability. The silence that followed this statement stretched until a Krellian fleet commander found his voice. What would you call it then? Pest control, Chen replied with the same casual tone one might use to discuss weather patterns. The council chamber erupted in outraged chittering, growling, and crystalline ringing as representatives from across the galaxy processed this casual dismissal of their military might. But beneath the anger lay a cold understanding that the human colonel wasn't boasting. He was stating a simple tactical assessment. However, Chen continued once the noise subsided, "We much prefer cooperation to conflict. Your species have qualities that complement our own capabilities. Together we can build something greater than any of us could achieve separately." Thexel stepped forward, his role as intermediary forcing him to voice the question every leader in the chamber was thinking. What assurances do we have that humanity will honor any agreements we reach? The same assurances we have that you will honor them, Chen replied. Mutual benefit and the understanding that cooperation serves everyone's interests better than conflict. The Scytheran intelligence chief activated her personal communication array. "We will need time to deliberate." "Of course," Chen acknowledged. "Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready to proceed." The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence as they contemplated their options. The choice was stark in its simplicity: accept humanity as the galaxy's new apex predator, or face the consequences of opposing them. One by one, the representatives began activating their communication systems, sending encrypted messages to their home governments. The debates that followed would shape the future of galactic civilization. But the outcome was already predetermined by 3 human women who had casually dismantled everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare. On distant Earth, recruitment centers reported unprecedented numbers of young women volunteering for military service. They had heard stories of their sisters among the stars, tales of humans who had looked into the darkness between worlds and found nothing there worth fearing. The galaxy had mocked human women and learned too late that humanity's daughters were not the weak links in their species' military chain. They were its finest weapons. Precision instruments of war wrapped in deceptive packages of apparent vulnerability. And somewhere in the training facilities where human soldiers learned their deadly trade, instructors watched new recruits with quiet satisfaction. The galaxy had been assessed. Humanity's place in the cosmic order had been established. And the stars themselves had learned to fear the sound of gunfire echoing from Terra's children. The age of human expansion had begun, carried forward on the wings of bullets that never missed their mark, and guided by women who had turned the galaxy's own prejudices into the weapons of its conquest. In the end, the aliens had been right about one thing: human women were dangerous. They had simply failed to understand that danger was exactly what humanity had intended to demonstrate.